Jasmine Crockett was humiliated in public, dismissed by live show security and treated like a problem until the show producer walked through the doors and flipped the script. It all began on a brisk weekday morning, with the buzz of anticipation hanging in the air outside the downtown studio, where one of the nation's most watched political segments was about to go live. The show had a reputation for bringing in influential guests from every corner of public life: senators, governors, CEOs, activists, and cultural icons. On that day's docket was a lineup of individuals who were supposed to reflect the pulse of America's political and cultural discourse. And somewhere in that lineup, albeit undisclosed to the public, was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a rising force in American politics whose impassioned speeches and uncompromising stance on justice had earned her national recognition. Jasmine Crockett, fresh off a heated congressional session and en route from another early morning commitment, arrived at the studio slightly ahead of schedule. Her arrival was unassuming, no flashing entourage, no booming PR rep announcing her name. She came dressed in smart professional attire that blended her fierce intellect with the kind of effortless confidence that made her presence undeniable, even if her name hadn't been shouted ahead of her. But amid the routine, something had gone wrong. In the shuffle of documents, schedules, and movement between locations, she had forgotten to bring the physical invitation card sent by the studio for security purposes, a simple paper formality, but one that would become the spark to a brewing storm. She approached the entry gate calmly, introducing herself with grace and expecting a short check-in followed by a trip to the green room. But what she met instead was a wall of skepticism. The lead security officer, an older man with a hardened expression and years of experience controlling crowds and filtering out uninvited guests, immediately questioned her presence. "Excuse me," he began, scanning her appearance with narrowed eyes. "Do you have your invitation badge?" Jasmine, slightly taken aback but still composed, explained that she was a scheduled guest and had arrived early. She offered to show identification and even pulled up an email confirmation on her phone. But the guard wasn't interested in emails or explanations. His focus was rigid: no badge, no entry. "I'm sorry, we've had too many incidents with people trying to sneak into the studio. You'll have to wait outside or come back with proper credentials," he insisted, despite Jasmine repeating her name and attempting to clarify her role. The security team remained unmoved. One of the younger assistants even went so far as to whisper, just loud enough to be heard, "She might just be someone trying to meet the celebrities." That comment hung in the air like a slap. Jasmine, a sitting member of Congress, was being mistaken for a fan angling for a selfie with a public figure. She could have reacted with rage or indignation, but instead, she simply nodded, stepped back, and took out her phone to make a call. As Jasmine waited calmly by a nearby bench, dialing her chief of staff, inside the studio the wheels of recognition began to turn. Her name, unfamiliar to the guards outside, was ringing loudly in the ears of a show producer who had just received a panicked text from someone on the guest coordination team. "Jasmine Crockett is here," but security turned her away. "You need to fix this immediately." The producer, mid-conversation with a host, froze and stared at his phone. "They did what?" he said aloud, not believing what he was reading. He rushed toward the control room and barked orders to find the head of security. Panic set in behind the scenes. In the control room, junior producers scrambled to locate the Congresswoman. Communications buzzed between teams as staffers ran through guest lists and confirmed her scheduled appearance. Meanwhile, Jasmine's chief of staff, now fully briefed, was coordinating with studio contacts to remedy the situation, just as the security guards were returning to their regular duties. Unaware of the storm they had just ignited, a flood of texts and calls began to reach them from inside. It only took minutes before the same guard who had denied Jasmine's entry received a direct call from his superior. The expression on his face shifted from mild irritation to utter disbelief. He looked over at his colleagues and said, "That woman, she's a congresswoman." The younger assistant who had mocked her earlier stared at him, confused. "You mean, that was real?" The weight of what they had done began to settle in like concrete. The energy at the security desk turned from procedural to panicked. People began running toward the entrance. Outside, Jasmine was still calmly speaking on the phone when the studio doors burst open and a handful of staff members poured out. The security guard who had denied her, now looking pale and defeated, approached her with a mixture of regret and nervous respect. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "we are terribly sorry for the mix-up. Please, come inside." Jasmine stood, slipped her phone into her bag, and looked him square in the eye. "It happens more often than you'd think," she replied, walking past him with elegance and quiet authority. As she walked through the lobby, The same security officers who had turned her away just minutes ago could barely meet her gaze. The producer met her at the elevator and apologized profusely, assuring her that the incident would not reflect the values of the show. Jasmine didn't lash out. Instead, she nodded, and with a calm and confident tone said, "Next time, tell your team to ask questions before assuming answers." Inside the studio, the energy was electric. Crew members whispered about what had just happened. The hosts, now aware of the situation, adjusted their tone, prepping for the interview not just with another guest, but with a woman who had already shown more poise and power off camera than many of their guests had in front of the lens. As Jasmine was mic'd up and guided onto the set, the host leaned over and offered a sincere apology on behalf of the show. "I'm so sorry for the way you were treated earlier," she said. "That's not who we are." Jasmine smiled graciously and replied, "No harm done. Let's use it as a moment to talk about bigger things." And talk she did. When the cameras rolled and the segment began, Jasmine didn't hesitate to address the morning's incident. "Before we dive into policy," she began, "I'd like to share a small story that happened this morning. I arrived early, ready to discuss the issues that matter to this country, but because I didn't have a visible credential, I was denied entry." She paused, allowing the statement to sink in. "This isn't just about me. It's about the way we treat people based on assumptions. Because I wasn't wearing a name tag or shouting my title, I was dismissed." Her words cut through the screen. She tied the incident to broader themes: racial profiling, gender bias, and the need for systemic change not just in politics but in everyday interactions. She spoke passionately about how women, particularly women of color, are often required to constantly prove their worth and legitimacy in spaces where others are given the benefit of the doubt. The audience was transfixed. Viewers at home flooded social media with reactions. Many shared their own experiences of being underestimated, overlooked, or dismissed. Others expressed outrage at the treatment she received, especially given her status and service to the nation. But perhaps the most remarkable part of her appearance was how she used what could have been a personal insult to spark a national conversation. She didn't seek pity. She didn't attack the security staff. Instead, she illuminated a cultural fault line with clarity and compassion, reminding the audience that it's not about titles, it's about how we choose to see one another. Back in the security office, the guards watched the live feed of the show in stunned silence. Their earlier dismissiveness now felt heavy with guilt. The younger assistant stared blankly at the monitor and whispered, "She didn't yell at us, not even once." The older guard slowly nodded. "She didn't have to," he said. "That woman carries more power in silence than most men do shouting." After the show, Jasmine didn't rush out. She took time to speak to members of the production team, posed for photos, and even walked over to the security desk. She extended a hand to the guards who had earlier kept her out. "I hope today was a learning experience," she said. "We all make mistakes. What matters is how we grow from them." The gesture, sincere and striking, left a mark that none of them would soon forget. The clip of her story, combined with her segment, went viral within hours. Celebrities reposted it, activists hailed her composure, and even political opponents acknowledged the power of her delivery. Journalists praised how she turned an awkward morning incident into a national reflection on equity and dignity. She was trending not for a scandal or a soundbite, but for showing what real leadership looks like when the cameras are both on and off. That day didn't just reaffirm Jasmine Crockett's status as a force to be reckoned with, it redefined the very idea of who gets recognized in America, and it left a permanent imprint on the minds of those who watched, those who judged too quickly, and those who walked away with a little more humility. If this powerful story inspired you, if it reminded you of how quick assumptions can blind us to the truth, then do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Stories like these deserve to be seen, and voices like Jasmine Crockett's deserve to be heard by all.